Welcome. Thank you all who are joining for today's webinar on driving revenue growth with emerging technology. Our guest today, guest speaker is Dr. Satya Narasimhan. And those of you that are joining online, you are muted throughout the session, but we want this to be an interactive session. Many of you have already submitted questions in advance, but those of you that would like to submit questions during the presentation may do so via the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And we will be answering questions at the very end. I am Leanne from Alumni Relations, and I am going to pass the virtual microphone to Paul Kirker of the Bay Area Alumni Club. Paul?
Thank you, Leanne. So good evening, everyone, and some of you maybe it's good morning. Thank you for participating. I'm Paul Crooker, as Leanne said, with the San Francisco Boost Bay Area Alumni Club, and we are happy to have Dr. Satya Narasimhan, PhD and MBA, for this event today on driving revenue growth with emerging technology-based innovation in enterprises. And Satya is a Senior Director of New Ventures and Technologies product management at SAP, and you have his bio on the registration, so I won't go through that now. But I think, you know, the real focus here is that the San Francisco Bay Area economy is significantly driven by technology and innovation. And what Satya put together here is his perspective and SAP's approach, along with a few examples. So that's what we have planned today. I think it's going to be very interesting. And also there's an opportunity, as Leanne said, to have questions. So thank you for the questions that some of you provided during registration. And also please, feel free to put your questions into the Q&A and chat, and we'll go from here. So Satya, with that, floor is yours.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Leanne, and also thanks to the University of Chicago, San Francisco Alumni Club from the Booth School of Business. So it's always exciting to engage with the Booth community. 10 years ago, when I graduated from Booth, the economy had just come out of the Great Recession. I remember the very first day I had my orientation at Booth. My classmates were talking about how Bear Stearns went under, and I didn't even know what that really meant. So in the ensuing days, as we all know, as I was going through the Booth classroom, everything was put in the context of how the economy was going, and it was a great learning experience. So here again, 10 years after graduation, we are in another unprecedented economic circumstances. And one thing I can confidently share is that, whatever we went through at Booth pretty much prepares you for circumstances like this. And, we thought about what could be a good information to share in a collaborative manner with fellow Booth alumni here in the Bay Area. And we thought, many of us are in leadership roles, either as a technologist rolling out new products or making investment decisions, either as a venture capitalist or a private equity, or on the adoption side of using technology to grow businesses. So we thought, from the perspective of a practitioner, provide some flavor around what it takes to build a new business using emerging technologies, build it successfully, and also grow it to scale. So a lot of information I'm going to be sharing are based on my experiences from SAP, although this session is not about SAP or selling SAP. This is more of my personal view forged through my experiences at SAP, and I fully aware that there are more than 60 people in this call now, and many of you are already an expert. So I would welcome any comments or questions and any other data points that would also augment or complement the view that I'm sharing now. So, the current role I am in for the past 5 years as a part of the New Ventures and Technologies organization, we consider our mission is to really future-proof SAP, meaning we work on topics both on new technology as well as new business models that the rest of the company may not or cannot work on. So to give you a little flavor, at any given time, the water cooler in our office is filled with, what you can play with a buzzword bingo. And we also make it externally available. So here are some of the ideas we thought through. There is a link at the bottom that I would encourage you to visit, where you can go through at any given time all the ideas that we are incubating. And for the purpose of this session in the next half an hour to 45 minutes, we thought it would be helpful to go through at least two of these domains. So I will be going through our experiences in building a business around blockchain, and then the second one around applying automation. And also kind of talk about how we are organizationally set up. How do we approach innovation? So going through these three topics over the next 30 to 40 minutes, and also answer any questions that you may have along the way. So to start with a new technology topic, you should have a trigger. And the trigger for us came in around 2017 when there is actually a spike if you look at Google Trends for topics on blockchain. Amount of interest, not just from the technology and the investors, but pretty much the entire ecosystem. In 2017, if you didn't have a point of view on what blockchain is and what blockchain could do for your business, it's as if in the 2000s you didn't have a clue about what websites would mean for your business. So this kind of trigger made us take a closer look at, okay, people are saying blockchain is going to replace SAP. So why not invest and understand how we can disrupt ourselves versus being disrupted by somebody else? And when you have a kind of a trigger, the next point is to understand, what does the technology actually entail? So for a very long time, people have solved the databases, the distributed aspects, the trust and credibility that comes with having multiple parties together. So what is unique about blockchain? So the work involved in developing a technology strategy that goes beyond just Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is just one application of blockchain where you are able to bring multiple parties together. Oftentimes these are strangers and they trust each other with one of the things that people don't trust anybody with, which is money. So if you can get strangers together in a network and have them trust their money with strangers, then you have a really interesting technology. So then how does that translate to an enterprise world? So when you start looking at it from that perspective, we call this the Cambrian explosion of blockchain and related technology. And everybody was coming up with their flavor of a technology that each addresses specific end markets or types of problems that they are uniquely capable of solving. For example, on the blockchain side, you have Bitcoin, which is all about getting a decentralized, ungoverned network where anybody can participate. On the other hand, the requirement on the enterprise side was we don't really need to have a public network that anybody can join. A lot of times, the company-to-company transactions are private, and we need a permission network. And within the permission network, we do not need to share all the data of a business, but maybe you want to share only a portion of the data. So all these collection of technologies, and this is not comprehensive, this is just to give you a flavor, all addressing different parts of the use cases that one can apply a blockchain or related technology to solve a problem that is a critical problem, but in a new way. So when we look at this and we quickly analyze, okay, we want to play on the enterprise permission side. We don't want to be on the public cryptocurrency side. You're making a call on the technology. So we build that technology strategy and then prioritize where to focus. And when we focused on enterprise permission network, we also wanted to understand where we have our right to win. So SAP's right to win is in few of the domains, and one of them is in supply chain traceability. So food safety specifically was a big topic where, you need to have a good understanding of the provenance of how your food is landing on your plate, essentially, so that in case there is a safety recall issue, rather than spending weeks and months and basically putting the entire industry in jeopardy, you are able to pull the right product from the right shelves in the right time. Now, the hype around the blockchain really put this on steroids, which means people were looking at tracking anything that's novel. For example, from high-priced artwork to connoisseur and gourmet wine. So these are all the use cases where you could track them using blockchain, but then what is the value? Is it really sustainable? Does the industry really want them? So we try to apply these additional rules to come up with a market definition of, where do we think it makes sense to apply blockchain and solve a problem in a way that no other technology could solve. So for us, the answer was in seafood traceability. And once we determined that is the end market where it is unique to approach with blockchain, the approach we took was we need a lighthouse customer. We need a first mover who will be willing to take the technology, apply it in their business in a way that is really impacting and moving their needle. So one of the benefits at SAP is we have about 500,000 customers, not consumers, but really business customers. So out of the 500,000 looking for a truly cutting edge innovator in the seafood industry who will be willing to co-innovate with us to see how this applies and transforms their business. So in this case, it is Bumblebee. And before I get into kind of how we approach this, I wanted to show a quick video around what the outcome of this effort was. So I'm just going to switch my video. This is a very short description of what we did. So let's take a look.
Saya Jafar, saya sebagai nelayan, saya di Laut Indonesia, saya lagi mencari tuna sirip kuning.
Jafar's fish join thousand others here at the receiving plant. The scanner is the first step in capturing information about how and where the fish are caught. That info is stored in the cloud and enters a secure blockchain. It makes me feel proud about myself. You can prove that your fish come from the right source.
Now this is the safety story. Here in this independent laboratory, we test the food safety of the product. The data is instantly available. In the past, I had to search for data, and now it's there at the stroke of a keyboard. The data generated in this laboratory is fed up to the blockchain. It is then available to the premier restaurants and retailers in the United States. I take the responsibility very personally. I never want someone to get sick.
Here we are at the finishing part, the last step before this fish gets to your table. What's incredible is that we track every piece of fish, and we share that information and that transparency with the people who will end up eating this fish. We have our first look at the new blockchain analytics for the supplier. Let's go through and see Jafar's fish. And it pulls up the amount of fish he's caught on every day, how much they weighed, and how much was fair trade.
It's a lot of data.
This is connected to the SAP blockchain. It's based on permissions, so only specific suppliers will give access to their specific data.
Nice.
Aku jadi pingin nelayan Indonesia untuk selama-lamanya. Saya Jafar, saya bisa membagikan pekerjaan saya kepada dunia.
So I took a little gamble showing this video. I know this is dinner time and I'm showing tuna. But the key element I wanted to highlight here is blockchain-based solution is not all about blockchain. On the technology side, you saw the IoT was used to scan and track the fish information. Blockchain is not all about just technology either, so it's all about also creating new business model. So as you can see, in case of Bumblebee, they have a high quality, differentiated seafood product, and yet, seafood as an industry has, challenges where they have to battle to prove the authenticity of the product that they are packaging as a product that they are labeling what it is. So it also adds more credibility to Bumblebee's quality. There is also a big impact on the social aspects of things. For example, in seafood industry, there are many regulations and certifications someone has to go through. For example, you didn't catch any dolphins, for example. And also, you saw the fishermen and the community. Oftentimes, when they come back home with a catch, the whole village celebrates. So there is a whole, community aspect to, providing the right data and visibility to the standard of these catching in the fisherman community that you can provide an access to, for example, a non-government organization by having the data captured in the blockchain network. So when we took the technology, found out the right way to apply it, and determine the right domain and the right way of applying it, what you now have is a full end-to-end solution and a business model where blockchain is making a true difference to Bumblebee as a business owner, to us as consumers. Now we have the full traceability of the product we are buying, as well as to the fisherman community, along with everybody else in the supply chain along the way. Now, this is how we kind of take a journey of understanding how you kind of determine where to place the bets in the technology, and within the technology, how you place the bet, and also how you bring to the market. So this was done, over the past couple of years. And, once you incubate it, how does it scale from there? Then you need to have critical factors coming in from the market awareness and maturity standpoint. So in case of blockchain, people were reading materials on how it takes the energy consumed by a household for a whole year to mine 1 Bitcoin, and they had wrong connotation of what the technology actually means. But with the enterprise, the way we applied blockchain, it doesn't have any of those performance limitations. So we proved that this technology is stable and it's cost effective and it works. We also kind of found out the niche way to apply blockchain. It doesn't completely replace any existing system, but if you apply it in a smart way, it basically helps you bring multiple parties together and create trust. And finally, you need to have a compelling mechanism. So we thought going into the seafood traceability that there may be some requirements on the FDA side to have and require manufacturers to comply with a greater food safety standard. And, these expectations came out to be true. For example, the FDA statement that you see on the right here, this just came out this week. So FDA on the food side is encouraging application of new technology. They don't go to an extent of saying you have to use blockchain, but they encourage you to use new technology. And in this case, blockchain is a great and right fit. And what they also encourage is, using new business models around these technologies that will basically launch the food and drug side to a transformative growth stage. So hopefully this kind of gives you a perspective of how you go with one technology on a full cycle basis. I'll just pause here if there are any quick questions on this topic. I don't see anything on the forum, so feel free to drop them. But I did notice one of the participants asked, why are we seeing growth in blockchain more on behind the scenes versus in other areas like IoT and big data, it's more pronounced and it's in the front and center. So my perspectives on that would be, for one, this is not an easy technology to apply. As you can see with this example, it's not only enough that we have a viable technology, in this case we do, we also need an ecosystem of technology providers who will support interoperable network so that anybody can join a blockchain network. So not everybody needs to be an SAP customer or a non-SAP customer or associated with a particular vendor. If there are 60 of us in this call and each of us decide to go with completely different vendors, we should have that freedom of choice from the technology standpoint. That takes time. Another important factor is, it is a network game. So here, for example, Bumblebee is sharing the data of the fish traceability to those who is required to be on the blockchain network. This type of data visibility upstream and downstream in the supply chain, that's just not how the industry operates today. There is a paradigm shift that the industry needs to take through so that they can share the information that normally they weren't sharing before. So that takes time. And finally, the industry can accelerate whenever there is a compelling event. For example, in case of food and drug safety, FDA has come up with regulations that are more incentivizing applying a blockchain-based technology. You could also have a scenario that we are going through right now with COVID-19, and there are a lot of talks around how you can improve the contact tracing by using a blockchain network. And that is another example, right? So if you are like me looking at the county level dashboard, you could get that. If you are like me, again, looking at Johns Hopkins national level dashboard, you could also get that. And also, if you want to look at a monthly level dashboard on a global level, you could also get that. So you don't really need a blockchain-based network to share real-time data around how the cases are progressing. But there may be some more audit and traceability requirements. For example, did people change their test results? Did people mark a COVID category to be a non-COVID and non-COVID to a COVID? And does it have any impact on the policy and management of the pandemic? So you may not want to track all the data, but maybe the governance of how the data itself was captured may be a good thing to be stored on a blockchain so it's immutable and there's more trust. And also, for example, who can create a worldwide blockchain network that skims all the personal data. So if the countries are not trusting each other on the pandemic cases that they are reporting, this could be a very viable solution that you currently don't have in the market. So these are some of the key differentiations specific to blockchain on what it takes to come up with a successful business model right around blockchain. I saw some traffic here. So one of the questions here is, how do you decide, or do you have a process around deciding what goes on in your buzzword board? We do, and I want to highlight on that towards the end of my conversation here. So just hold on to that thought for a second. The second thing I wanted to share from a topic standpoint is, okay, with blockchain, we have shown how it's done on a full cycle, but what if you are currently working on something that could be a similar buzzword and has a big hype and expectation on what it could entail in the future? So the second topic I want to talk about is in terms of automation. So now this picture of the Bloomberg terminal probably creates a lot of good memory and reaction to those of you who enjoy spending time in front of the Bloomberg terminal during your time on campus. But try to look at it from a slightly different perspective. I mean, you have mobile devices, tablets, cloud native, fancy looking consumer grade applications. And, try to show this screen to someone who is, for example, entering new into the industry or technology. They're going to ask, this is so complex. This is not user friendly. But we know fully that there is a purpose behind why the Bloomberg terminal is set up this way. This is not an app where you can casually use. This is really a technology on steroids that highly expertized and specialized traders look at to make very important decisions around how they allocate and trade and manage their portfolio of investments. You can also think about similar scenario in any number of wide enterprise-grade applications, whether it is your airline agent working with the reservation system. It could be same as your purchasing managers, warehouse operators, accounts receivable, accounts payable, shared services. You can name any number of core enterprise users. They also have similar situation when it comes to interacting with enterprise applications. A lot of these applications are platformed 20, 30 years ago, and they are very purpose-built. It's kind of like you want to build an Excel model, and you are a pro user, and you could do an entire business model with just keystroke without even touching the mouse. And now somebody's coming and saying, okay, we're going to change the Excel GUI, and you have to go through a whole bunch of clicks to build that business model. It just doesn't go well in terms of managing the change when it comes to releasing a new application. On the other hand, just look at how much advancements have gone into things like natural language processing, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. So one could take a look at this Bloomberg terminal example and say, the algorithms can do the trading. A lot of information that you see here and the way you use it, you're not really using the core human characteristics such as empathy or compassion. Why wouldn't we have a more automated way of getting things done? And that is where the next topic of automation comes. An equivalent of how we can take this experience to the next level would be, for example, from the perspective of a bank loan manager. Let's say you apply for a bank loan.
Offering. So
let's say you are in a business of making bank loans, and somebody asks for a $100,000 loan. And your customer profile screen says you're going to offer, let's say, 2.5% to this customer. But you don't know how competitive you are compared to other banks in the region. So a task that a bank loan representative could potentially take is, take your information, we know kind of your income level, credit history. I can manually go to a different bank's websites and their loan calculators and see what interest rates they are offering, and then provide a reaction back to you around what we can offer. So now applying automation, what we're going to show here is this purple icon that says competitive loans. So you click that button, automatically you're triggering a bot. The bot is configured to look at 5 different loan websites, go to their loan calculator, punch in the customer's information, take the results that it's providing, and present it to you in a way where you can make a decision on whether the loan that you're offering at 4.55%, is it better or worse than your competitor? And if it is worse, do you want to match the offer and send out a letter or communication to the customer so you can serve that person? So now this is an example where we are applying automation as a way to improve the task associated with a specific business process. And this is one of the areas where there is a lot of activity from a technology perspective, because the algorithms have gone better and you are able to work with a wide variety of applications and tools that you weren't able to previously do, and do so in a scale where it's not one-off execution of automation bots, but more of an organizational capability. Now, it also triggers another set of innovation. For example, let's say you are the owner of this department and you have, say, 30 representatives making these loans. How do you know one person is not looking at any competitor while the other person is spending the whole day looking at 20 different competitors? What is the best practice? So by having a bot do this task for your team, you have now KPIs that you didn't have access to before, where you can say, yep, I looked at 5 competitors. This is where there is a systematic trend of what is working and what is not working. And this is a piece of important operation, piece of metric that you didn't have access before. So as we look at kind of automation and the art of the possible of what it could do, the key trend that we see here is the companies have made investment in technology that has outpaced and has not kept with kind of the people and the process element. And there has to be a rebalance where you're really working on process excellence that takes the automation to the next level. What would that look like? For us, it's really a convergence of multiple technologies. For example, we looked at things like robotic process automation for a very specific task, like in the video that I showed. We also looked at, other related disciplines. For example, you can understand how the user is interacting with your application. So we call that user behavior mining. This gives you new insights around your application that you didn't have access before. And you can also apply things like natural language processing and data mining to really create an end-to-end process automation beyond just the band-aid aspect of automating a task. So what would something like that look like? So we have a little bit of a vision around how you could take these technology to the next level. For example, in this case, we're going to be looking at, for example, you take the use case of a purchasing organization. What they do day in and day out is, work with their suppliers, send purchase orders, collect the material, the supplier sends an invoice, and then you pay the invoice, and then the supplier reconciles that invoice. If you take this very simple process, it can be really complex, especially if you are a manufacturer and you're spending 2/3 of your money with the direct procurement. So what we have done here is to show how, from a Canvas standpoint, you can take the user behavior mining, you can get the analytics and telemetry from various applications in your landscape, and build an end-to-end visibility into your process that you never had before. For example, as a purchase organization, you can have a full-length set of metrics around, what metrics you care about, how they are performing, this could be your daily go-to dashboard. But then there is nothing new with this compared to what you can do with analytics and dashboard today. What is unique about the vision in this dashboard is, if you go down to the bottom of this, we are showing, for example, there is a step in your process called escalation management. And, it is about the normal of what you have experienced in the past. And most importantly, what your peers in the industry are experiencing. So one of the key advantages to this solution would be you have real-time visibility into how your team is performing versus other teams within your organization, as well as the rest of your industry peers. So here, for example, you're saying it takes longer to resolve any escalations. And the reason is because, you're spending a lot of efforts manually. And it allows you to drill down to understand that, you have basically gliding away from your best practice level of, 3 to 5 to almost double your manual efforts to resolve the issue. So now, how do we apply automation in this scenario? So this is what we call a citizen developer or a low-code or a no-code technology, which is very popular buzzword these days. So in this example, we are launching an application called Room that was built by SAP. And what Room is, the look and feel of this application is going to be very much like your Microsoft Word, but it's basically a business canvas that understands the natural language, and it allows anybody with an understanding of the underlying business process to basically create a really powerful solution. So here, as a process owner for the procure to pay, I want to resolve the manual escalation timeframe, and this is how I'm going to resolve it. I'm going to create a process saying I first need to investigate the reasons behind it, and then I need to come up with a solution, and then I'm going to apply automation to solve it. In order to investigate, I'm going to call upon my experts who are my colleagues and coworkers. So I'm going to pull up persons from accounts payable and purchasing and legal. And the best part about this is now you're not spending a lot of time on the collaboration system of actions. By that, what I mean is, if you were to normally launch a project like this, you need to assemble a team, you need to look at their calendars, set up a kickoff meeting, go through the whole set of defining what this team will do, and also have ongoing cadence. By the time you are done with this, a couple of weeks later, you have emails flying around, SharePoints created, documents going all over the place, but here we are bringing it all together. And once you assemble the team in this collaborative environment, you can start assigning how you would go about doing the investigation. So here, for example, we are drilling deeper into the process expertise, and the process expert says that these are the information you need and an approval from legal before you can completely resolve a manual escalation. So now you have determined and investigated. Now you can go through a set of approvals to make sure the stakeholders have been onboarded. And once you get the approval modeled in, now you can automatically trigger automation bots. Similar to the bot we saw in the banking example, the bot is going to run in the background the whole process of accelerating the manual escalation process. So you are defining a collaboration mechanism, defining a process, calling on automation, and now when you're able to publish this process, this is basically running pervasively in your environment, and as a result, you're able to get feedback on how quickly you are able to resolve all these manual escalations. So the reason this end-to-end scenario is possible, again to recap, is you're applying a canvas-based no-code, low-code environment. We are applying robotic process automation. You have the metrics coming in from the business, from the user behavior mining standpoint, as well as telemetry from application standpoint. In a way, you could describe this as a advanced use case on machine learning as well as big data. I wouldn't say this is artificial intelligence just yet, because you do need help from a process expert to define what needs to be done. But outside of that, this is really converging multiple disciplines to create an end-to-end scenario. This is what Gartner calls hyperautomation. So for those of you who are following Gartner's, I want to show you real quick. If Zoom lets me do it. So Gartner publishes some of the top 10 technology trends to follow. And the trend number 1 is hyperautomation. And it gives you a little description about how they view hyperautomation to evolve. And hopefully I gave you a little flavor about how we take trends like this and apply it within the context of SAP to really take an idea from a buzzword to actually implementing a viable business model. So just take a pause here to see if there are any questions. There is one here from the blockchain side. I would address that, but let me just wrap up the points I wanted to make on the automation. So this is how we basically take any given technology and understand what is the right way to apply and bring it to the market. The question on the blockchain side was, are we doing it ourselves, or are we collaborating with others? I'll be happy to share more information on that, but the way I would summarize it is blockchain is a team sport. One person won't be able to do it all on their own. So we have an ecosystem of partnerships, both with big technology vendors like Microsoft, Amazon, IBM, as well as all the way down to startups in our accelerators and the funding mechanisms that we have in place. And through these partnerships, we build out an ecosystem and bring out these emerging technologies. On the same token, I want to also kind of quickly highlight how we are actually bringing out these innovations. So from my organization standpoint on the new ventures and technologies, we kind of look at the horizon in 3 steps. What is now, what is next, and what is new? And the new is something I would characterize as something that is around 12 to 18 months out from now. So we would rely as an organization on the product teams and the line of business to manage the innovation around the now, because this is an active roadmap item that they would be working on. And then we partner with the lines of businesses on the things that we have incubated, such as blockchain, such as automation, to make it pervasively available in a mature product. And that is what I would call the next. Where we focus large amount of our energy is on the new topic, where the lines of businesses doesn't think it is relevant now, or they cannot afford to focus on those topics. And when we work with these new topics, we also have a view that these have to turn into a viable business model. So there are no science experiments in Horizon 3 that we do. We look at the tight product market fit to how we, bring it onboarded into our customer base. And that is how we kind of make an investment decision to go forward. That methodology alone is not enough. We think for anything that we incubate, there has to be an organizational culture that is ingrained to take what we build and take it to scale. I kind of look at it as innovation as an organ transplant. It is good for your body, you know it, everybody knows it, but if you don't do it the right way, the body is going to reject the transplant. So how do we bring that culture? So we have kind of 3 different models that we take the entire organization through. On the left-hand side, it's more technology heavy with the Innovation Center Network. On the right-hand side, it is a more business model, product heavy with the SAP.io. And in between is our entrepreneurship model, where we try to, in a company of about 100,000 people, we try to reach at least 10%, which is a very big number. 10% of the employees go through some version of this process where they have thought of an idea, they have come across an idea, and they wanted to understand what it is to be an entrepreneur, to see that idea through the finish line. So we have the entrepreneurship program that brings more of the startup culture into as many employees as possible. On the left-hand side, we have a global network of innovation centers that are tapping into the local ecosystems of technologies, startups, and domain experts to understand what are the key technologies that should be in our horizon and the radar. And the way we kind of make decision around that is, SAP again publishes several thought leadership. So one of the things is, for example, is what we call our technology radar. So here, for example, we are publishing on an ongoing basis some of the key topics that we are interested in and we are pursuing. And this is one way for us to engage with ecosystem of both partners as well as customers of any size to build out these innovation on a collaborative basis. And finally, on the investment side, to do an outside-in innovation, SAP also has Sapphire Venture, which is more of your traditional venture capitalist model that is set up outside of the SAP's product organization. But within the SAP's product organization, we also have this model called SAP.io, which really looks at identifying interesting ideas both internally and externally to SAP, either in terms of actually providing funding to help with teams or startups to build out their ideas, as well as providing kind of an incubator type model to provide mentoring and coaching and advisory to make sure the companies that are well funded still have their strategy and the customer feedback fine-tuned in conjunction by working with SAP. So the way we kind of think about engaging the ecosystem is also publishing our thought leadership. For example, the Horizons by SAP kind of goes back to the 3 Horizons that I discussed before. And this is actually not an SAP's own material. We actually work collaboratively with a lot of thought leaders here from the industry to understand, outside of SAP, what are some of the things that companies are looking at. So this is basically what I wanted to share in terms of how we have done with the example of a couple of technologies, how we are doing with one of the hot technology trends, and what we are doing in terms of organizationally bringing out these capabilities in a scalable way. So just to summarize, right? So I have to summarize it in a Chicago way. And there is no right answer to the secret to success on how you can grow innovation. In my personal perspective, the phase in which you can grow a business either as an investor, you're making a decision on placing bets to grow with the technology, or as a product owner like me looking at serving a new end market, or as a technologist making investment to adopt the technology. I think the way things are evolving is that you're going to build a set of platform capabilities on the left here that will rely on the maturity of the technology you're working with, making sure you have the right talent that can apply the technology and also mature the technology. Outside of the technology and the talent, you have the right innovative culture in place that will nurture kind of the fail fast and innovate in an agile format, as well as an investment methodology that has the right trade-off between risk and reward and can make decisions in a timely fashion. Once you have these four combinations set up as a platform, it works really as an organizational capability. And for each one of these technology domains, then it's just a matter of applying that technology to a specific use case. For example, we have done that with blockchain, with supply chain, and very specifically food safety in seafood. And that gives you use case number one. We have another one on the drug side that ensures that the drugs, when they are returned, can be sold to other customer, and that is a solution that's based on blockchain. So we built a foundation, and we have a number of use cases that leverages that foundation. And once you have these use cases, you scale that with a ecosystem of partners. And the partners can really play a role to exponentially grow your business. So this is kind of like my, whimsical way of characterizing what I thought worked very well in the past 5 years of bringing out new technologies and products and growing net new business for SAP. So I hope this was an helpful perspective. So I would love to take any other questions that you may have. And also I will look forward to continuing the conversation and connect as well as reconnect with many of you through LinkedIn. So let me just take a look at the question here. Does SAP use hype cycles to determine which technology to focus, or is it purely market survey driven? What problems are people trying to solve? So there is no one answer. So as I showed, there are multiple teams looking at innovation, and there are also multiple organizations and the product teams themselves looking at what could be next in their roadmap. On top of that, we have very good customer advisory council, in addition to being engaged in the analyst community as well as the investment community. So it's really a matter of tapping into a lot of these different stakeholders, not to mention the academia as well. So we are really tapping into 5 or 6 of these really unique ecosystem of thought leaders and partners, along with something like an analyst would put out like Gartner's Hype Cycle, to really inform and come up with a market-backed view of what are the right things to go after. So with that, Leon and Paul, I do not see any more questions on the chat. If there are ones from the pre-submitted one that you think I should answer, I will be happy to take them. If not, I'll turn it back to you, Paul.
Fantastic. Very information-packed. So my brain is still only catching up myself. I've got to go through these slides and think about it some more. But I think that's one question that I think the slides can be available. Reach out to Satya on that, anyone who's on the call. Also, Leanne, is the way this works is the YouTube video has to be reviewed and the subcaptioning, subtitles have to be added. So it will be available in the future for those who have that question. But also there's a new question popped up, Satya, so maybe you can cover that. Did you see it there in the chat?
Sure, I have it there. Can you comment on how your approach can be accommodated in a small company, not the size and scope of SAP? So a quick answer would be, partner with someone that is a mutual fit and that is aligned with your growth objectives. If you, for example, take the case that I showed on Bumblebee, pun intended, they are a small fish in the big seafood and broader food industry ecosystem. But we were able to strike the right partnership where they had the good business model and a quality product, and they wanted someone who can arm them with the technology, and that was a great fit. So likewise, depending on what role you play in the ecosystem, either as an investor or a technology vendor or as a end user of adapting the technology, I think just as SAP has a lot of other companies on the application side, as well as from an ecosystem standpoint, have similar programs. And you may be able to leverage some of these capabilities that is, suitable for you based on your strategy on who the right partner may be. And you could also do a condensed version of these best practices. For example, having a entrepreneurship drive where you kind of understand who are the lead innovators working on cutting edge technology, who have released new products, and then showcase their stories around the organization. That's one way, you could start building out an innovation culture. You can also invite guest speakers from the technology vendors or anybody who is kind of like in an evangelical mode, who is interested in sharing their perspective on new technology. There are some things like this you may be able to do if you're constrained on budget, and also take it all the way through more of a strategic partnership discussion based on what your appetite to invest and grow with new innovation maybe. So a lot of different options.
One last question here. How does SAP manage to stay focused, and what happens to innovative ideas that don't really fit within SAP's core business area?
So there is an investment decision that we all go through and we take a hard look. In our case, specifically the things that we are working on, the new ventures and technologies organization, I'll give a little shout out to our Chief Innovation Officer, who is a former VC himself. So a lot of decisions that we make are on what we call a zero-based budgeting decision. For example, the hyperautomation vision I showed you, it is only a vision at this point. So we are looking and understanding how we would turn this into a viable market opportunity. So when the product finally comes out, it may or may not look exactly like the way I've showed you in the vision. And those are the decisions and investment decisions and discussions that we go through internally to ensure that are we hitting our key customer adoption milestones, that is show the product market fit. And most importantly, the company of the size that SAP is, and these innovation needs to, at the end of the day, move the needle for us overall in a meaningful way. And there are many ideas who can amount to multi-million-dollar new business for SAP. So there are a lot of things that do drop out, and by using kind of a VC type methodology and zero-based budgeting is some of the gates that we use to kind of determine what makes sense to be progressed. And if it doesn't, are there partners who are seeing viability and interest in making their own investment and taking that to the market? Or is it just, it's been a great experience and it's just not viable because this is not an interesting topic for customers or SAP, and those have to be completely sunset. So we go through that decision on a periodic basis.
Okay, we have time for one more question. If someone's out there who has a question they haven't asked yet, I think we've got a minute or two to get that in.
And as Paul said, the recording will be on the Chicago Booth YouTube channel after it has been closed captioned. So please stay tuned for that if you'd like to watch the recording.
I think we're all set, Satya. Thank you very much for giving us this session. It's a lot of information. Like I said, my brain needs time to absorb and watch that video again. and really spot on, I think, with respect to what we're shooting for and addressing and thinking about what the Bay Area is unique and what its strengths are. So big thank you for that. And thank you, Leanne, for working with us to organize this. And I would say to those who are still on the line, if there are ideas for speakers or sessions, send them to me, send them to Leanne. We can work to, part of our focus and goal is to, increase engagement and bring relevant events and subjects together for the Boost community to get together around. So I'll stop there, Leanne, and you wrap it up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Paul makes a great point. If anybody has any ideas for future speaking sessions that you're curious to learn about and you just want to let us know, I've chatted my email address to everyone on the call. So feel free to ping us. And Satya, thank you so much. This was really brilliant. We really appreciate it, as do all of the beautiful gratitude that's coming through on the chat. So everybody have a lovely
Thanks for having me. It was great to re-engage.
Cheers.
Everybody have a good evening.
Bye
Take
now.
care.
Bye-bye.